Welcome to Kayfabe Commentary, where we are going to be talking about the NWA's latest pay-per-view, Hard Times. Hi, my name is Erik Rupp, and I'll be your host today. And on this show, we're going to be talking about Hard Times. Now, I'm not going to do a blow-by-blow, play-by-play, match-by-match in order discussion. What we're going to be doing this time is more of a major events and general impressions of the show. And having said that, there is still a ton of stuff to talk about when it comes to Hard Times. And just the first overall general impression, this was a great pay-per-view. It's just a fantastic pay-per-view. There were some really, really amazing matches in this pay-per-view, and we're going to talk about several of them and about a lot of the wrestlers as well. So let's go right to it here and hit right from the top, Trevor Murdoch. Trevor Murdoch was great. He beat the Question Mark, and then he beat Dan Moff. He looked just fantastic doing that, but I got to say this. His chest looked like uncooked hamburger after Dan Moff was done with him. I mean, he just took a beating. That looked really painful, but he kept on going and got all the way to the finals for the TV title, and he looked good throughout. He was really impressive. Of course, he's tough as nails, but he's got really solid wrestling skills, which is not surprising. As you know, most of you know by now, he was trained by Harley Race. But man, I tell you what, one of the highlights of the show was the performance across the board of Trevor Murdoch. Now, speaking of Dan Moff, he's from Ring of Honor, and he looked really impressive. He beat Zicky Dice. That was a strong win. And the thing that really impressed me about Dan Moff, I mean, the guy's huge. I mean, he is just mammoth. I mean, the guy's monstrously big, really big. But he's not just big and strong. I mean, he is big and strong, but he's pretty damn quick, and he's also pretty damn agile. I mean, let me put it to you this way. It's almost unfair that a guy that big is that quick and that agile. I mean, he's really impressive. I was stunned. I did not expect to see that kind of movement and that kind of agility out of a guy like that, but he really did that, and he beat Zicky Dice in a good match. And the match with Trevor Murdoch, like I was saying before, this was a really brutal match. Back and forth, one of the hardest-hitting matches of the night, maybe the hardest-hitting match of the night. And it was one of those things where, Trevor Murdoch came out on top, but Dan Moff still looked really good and was very impressive, even though he lost. And I got to tell you what, one of the most impressive things in the whole pay-per-view was Dan Moff giving a mid-air spear on Zicky Dice as Zicky Dice went off the middle rope. That was just one of the most impressive moves of the entire match, given his size. That was just really amazing. Now, when you're talking about Zicky Dice, too, this guy's outlandish. We know that. But you know what? He's a pretty darn good wrestler. He had a strong showing against Dan Moff. And while he is, he's outlandish, he's outrageous and all that, he's got some good wrestling skills, and he's pretty strong. And he's got a really good future in the NWA. Now, I was talking before about how agile Dan Moff was and how surprising that was. Now, probably the most agile guy in the entire event was Matt Kross. He just had amazing agility, tremendous gymnastic and acrobatic skills. I mean, just something that you don't often see in pro wrestling. The guy looks like those Cirque du Soleil people who can jump from one pole to another, and then they'll hold the entire bodies out vertical. Just unbelievable. The strength that he has, the core strength, and the balance and the ability to do some of the stuff that he did. You just hardly ever see that kind of stuff in the wrestling ring, and he combined that with strength. I mean, physical pounding strength and solid wrestling moves, and his match with Ricky Starks was just really impressive, wildly entertaining. And while he didn't win, I think he won over some fans. He didn't win the match, but he won a lot of fans, as he should have. Matt Kross was just simply outstanding. Now, who wasn't simply outstanding because he wasn't there was Mr. Anderson. Ken Anderson not at the event. Now, the official word was that he was not medically cleared. I'm not quite sure what that means. I'm not sure if he's injured, if there are other issues going on, or if there's stuff behind the scenes that we don't know. This is really disappointing because Mr. Anderson has been fantastic in the NWA. He's become somebody you're kind of concerned about because he's losing it. I mean, the way he attacked Colt Cabana on the last episode of Power, you really want to see where that goes from here. And if he doesn't come back to the NWA, as his NWA future seems to be in doubt, if he doesn't come back, that is also going to be really disappointing. So hopefully we will see Mr. Anderson again in the NWA, but if not, we're going to be missing out. Now, another little bit of a disappointment was the in-ring appearance of Tim Storm. Now, he is by far the best good guy on the roster. He is an amazing representative of the NWA. He's a great representative. The fans love him, and more importantly, he loves the fans. He has pointed out that the NWA family isn't just the people that work for the NWA, that the fans are part of the family too, and we're all on the same team as fans, and that's just fantastic. I mean, you've got to love Tim Storm. It's impossible not to love him. But in the ring, he had an off night, and he lost to Ricky Starks because of it. He had one point where he hit the perfect storm, rolled into the cover, and rolled right off of Ricky Starks. He had a shot to win it right there, and he just lost it. Just not his night. You know, sometimes these wrestlers will have an off night, and for Tim Storm, that was it. And it's unfortunate. He would have been a great television champion. He understood the history of it. He respected it, but he is not, at this point, going to be the TV champion for the NWA. The TV champion is Ricky Starks. He is the first TV champion, the first television champion in decades. And he had to go through 3 guys to win that title. Now, he looked great against Matt Kross, who also looked great. That was a great back-and-forth match. Just fantastic stuff. You know, that's something where that's a highlight-type match. But then he had to go up and fight Tim Storm. That was only a good match. It wasn't a great match. It was a good match. Neither one of them looked great. Ricky Starks looked a little better, and he won that match fairly decisively. But where Ricky Starks really impressed the most was against Trevor Murdoch, a guy probably a good 60 pounds heavier than him. He really went toe-to-toe at times with Trevor Murdoch. He did a great job with him, and he even picked him up. Well, he didn't really pick him up. He was already on the top rope, but he took him off the rope, carried him out into the middle of the ring, and he dropped him into a really strong power bomb. That was impressive. The fact that he could carry Trevor Murdoch shows that Ricky Starks is stronger than he looks, and he was very impressive. Now, we all know, let's face it, Ricky Starks is extremely charismatic. He's got style. He's got flair. But you know what? In the ring, this guy is really strong. And I'm not talking about physical strength. I'm talking about skills. And, yeah, he's stronger physically than we seem to know before. That move with Murdoch definitely proved that. But I'll tell you what, Ricky Starks earned that TV championship at NWA Hard Times. Now, for me, the matchup that surprised me the most when it was announced was Aaron Stevens defending his national championship against Scott Steiner. You know, let's face it, Scott Steiner, that guy was a monster. I mean, you're talking about one of the best tag team wrestlers of all time, a very impressive, dominant singles wrestler. And Aaron Stevens has not yet proven to be anywhere near that league. And as you might have expected, and as I expected, Steiner dominated the match. He just absolutely dominated the match. Now, Steiner may be slower and less agile and less flexible than he used to be, but he still looked pretty good. And he would have won that match fairly easily if not for the question mark. He got Stevens in the Steiner recliner. This match was effectively over, and then the question mark came in, hit him, and got Stevens disqualified. So then as Stevens snuck out of the ring, Steiner hit the question mark and got him in the Steiner recliner. And rather than helping his sensei, Aaron Shooter Stevens, or ASS as Stu Bennett called him, he snuck off and got away, leaving the question mark to Scott Steiner. And as he applied that Steiner recliner, I'll tell you something, that does not look comfortable. Also on the show, we had an impressive 3-team Tag Team World Championship match between the defending champions, the Rock and Roll Express, the Living Legends, the Wild Cards, and the new team of James Storm and Eli Drake. I'll tell you what, the team of James Storm and Eli Drake has been amazingly cohesive, and they were extremely impressive in this match. Now, the Wild Cards, they were the Wild Cards. They were a really good, really effective tag team, and they did their thing. The Rock and Roll Express, as usual, held their own, except for the point at which Robert Gibson got knocked out of the ring and was attacked by Camille. She was just working him over, and it took him like 5 minutes to get back in the ring. And she continued to interfere in the match, which was a problem for the Rock and Roll Express, although eventually they did get back to a point where they made an impact in the match. Now, the thing about tag team matches, when you're talking about 3-team tag team matches, is that they are extremely hard to officiate. They often break down into chaos, and that was the case here for part of the match. And that's really why Camille was able to really repeatedly assault Robert Gibson out at the side of the ring, out on the floor, and get away with it. So there were periods of time in this match when it really was chaotic and a lot of stuff going on in and out of the ring. Eventually, you ended up at a point where you had Ricky Morton, Tom Latimer, and Eli Drake in the ring. Tom Latimer going for a power bomb, and Ricky Morton somehow hits him with the Canadian Destroyer. Latimer's out. He ends up rolling out of the ring at a time when Robert Gibson is dealing with Camille. And then Eli Drake is able to hit Ricky Morton with the gravy train. 1, 2, 3 new tag team champions, Eli Drake and James Storm. And I tell you what, that is a great team. And that was a really good match. It was a very entertaining match. It may not have quite been the match of the night, but that was an entertaining match. Great to see the tag team champions, now former tag team champions, the Rock and Roll Express, showing as well as they did. But I'll tell you what, the new team of James Storm and Eli Drake, that is one hell of a team, and they are going to be really hard to beat for that championship going forward. Of course, one of the big selling points of Hard Times was the match between Nick Aldous and Ring of Honor's Flip Gordon. I mean, you've had Nick Aldous invading Ring of Honor since he's kind of trying to get a little payback from Marty Scurll coming to the NWA at Hard Times. So you've got this back and forth between Nick Aldous and Ring of Honor. And so this match was every bit as good as you'd expect. Maybe a little better than the last one that the two of them had. What was that, a year and a half ago? I mean, the two of them had a great match at that time. This match was even better. Flip Gordon, what's the difference between Flip Gordon now and the last time the two of these guys met? It's Flip Gordon's attitude. He's got a nastier attitude. He's meaner, more aggressive, and that really showed in this match. This was a really good match. In a night filled with good matches, this one held up and was just a fantastic match, start to finish. And Flip Gordon really, again, this is one of those matches where he might have outpointed Nick Aldis if you were scoring it. But there was a pin, and Nick Aldis got the pin, kept his title, as it became a title match. When Marty Scurll really let Nick Aldis know, you know what, this should be a title match. The fans deserve to see this as a title match. And Nick Aldis agreed to that as long as Marty Scurll would leave the building, and Nick Aldis would have free reign to say what he was going to do when it comes to Ring of Honor going forward. So basically, since Nick Aldis did win, that means he's calling the shots when it comes to his appearances in Ring of Honor, and that could be really cool. I mean, this is really cool seeing the NWA working with Ring of Honor. There's going to be some crossover in talent, presumably. We know Nick Aldis is going to Ring of Honor for a couple of their events, so we're going to see some great great stuff going forward. And this was a really good match. That you saw at Hard Times, too, between Aldous and Flip Gordon. I think we're all hoping to see that Nick Aldis, Marty Scurll 2, the second match. We want to see the sequel. We want to see what this is going to be because Marty Scurll, he's got the motivation. He wants that 10 pounds of gold, and Nick Aldis wants to prove that it's his and that he's the better wrestler between the two of them. Now, you may have noticed that I saved the best for last, and that's exactly what I did. Thunder Rosa challenging for Alison Kay's Women's World Championship. Now, this was a match that we've been waiting a while to see. This was something that we've been looking forward to. It's been highly anticipated. The build-up's been there. And could it even possibly live up to the hype, the hope, the expectations? And in one word, yes. And it didn't just meet those expectations. This was a 20-minute epic. This was a 20-minute match of the year candidate. We're talking about, for sure, amongst any wrestling promotion, all matches in the country, in the world, this will be a top 10 match for sure. It may be top 3. This is a serious candidate for match of the year. This was an amazing match. The work that both Alison Kay and Thunder Rosa put into this match was just amazing. The effort, the stamina, just everything that you saw in there was what pro wrestling is all about. This was, just one of those matches, men, women, doesn't matter. This was a fantastic match, and you can't walk away from this event thinking anything other than, oh my God, that was amazing. The crowd knew it. The reaction online, and I'm sure most of you have read some, this is a match that has elevated both of them. Yes, Alison Kay is now an ex-champion, but in losing that match, she may have actually elevated her status because she showed just how great she is. We knew going in Thunder Rosa was great, but we weren't 100% sure that she could be a champion. We suspected she could. I firmly believed that she was the next world women's champion. But there's still, anytime you haven't done it yet, there's always that nagging doubt. Can she do it? Can she pull it off? And Thunder Rosa went in there and at first struggled against the larger, stronger Alison Kay. But over the course of the match, she wore Alison Kay down. But she just had a hard time putting her away. Why? Because Alison Kay kept coming back, kept digging deep to find that effort and find a way to get back into the match. Alison Kay had multiple times where it looked like maybe she was going to win this match. And then Thunder Rosa would come up with some effort, digging deep to find a way to kick out and to keep going. The two of them put in an amazing effort. This was a match that had it all. They started off just going toe-to-toe, wildly punching each other. And later in the match, about 16 minutes back into the match, they were doing that again. I mean, it was just one of those matches where it had everything. It came out wild-paced, incredibly frantic, and then things settled down. They tried to wear each other down. There were great moves, hard-hitting, high-flying, everything in this match. But ultimately, Thunder Rosa found a way to outlast Alison Kay. She was the better wrestler when it came down to the end, and Thunder Rosa is your new women's world champion, and deservedly so. She's fantastic. I love Thunder Rosa, and I think just about everybody does. The thing is, I also love Alison Kay. Alison Kay was a great champion. She held that title for 9 months, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if she won it back. Thunder Rosa is going to have to work her ass off to make sure she fights off Alison Kay, because I have a feeling we're going to see a rematch of this at some point, and that may be at the Crockett Cup in April. So ultimately, what did we get? We got a match of the year candidate, a bunch of really good to great matches, just a fantastic pay-per-view from the NWA that was more than worth what we paid for it. I'm glad that they priced it the way they did. That makes it easy to buy. That makes it a no-brainer the next time if they price it this way again. But I'll tell you what, this was worth every penny. It was a fantastic pay-per-view. And if you saw it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you didn't, and you're listening to this, you've got to get the replay at fight.tv. But anyway, that's it. That's all I've got to talk about when it comes to Hard Times. That was a fantastic pay-per-view. Hats off to the NWA. Hats off to all the wrestlers. You got to say it. That was a great pay-per-view.